Why We Get Sick, the Hidden Epidemic at the Root of Most Chronic Disease, and How to Fight It, by Benjamin Bikman, Ph.D. Let me tell you about a puzzle that's been quietly haunting the medical world for decades. And honestly, it's pretty wild once you see it. Imagine a guy in his 50s who suddenly develops high blood pressure. His doctor's advice? Cut back on the salt shaker. Then there's a woman in her 20s, devastated to learn she has PCOS, one of the leading causes of infertility. Across town, a grandfather who could once recite poetry from memory starts forgetting his grandchildren's names, the early, heartbreaking signs of Alzheimer's. A middle-aged man quietly struggles with erectile dysfunction, too embarrassed to talk about it. And your friend keeps finding these weird little skin tags popping up on their neck. These problems seem totally random, right? A heart thing, a reproductive issue, brain disease, a bedroom problem, some skin weirdness. You'd see 5 different specialists and get 5 completely different explanations. For years, we've treated them as separate bad luck, totally unconnected conditions requiring different pills, different advice, different worries. But here's the thing, what if they're not separate at all? What if these aren't 5 different puzzles, but 5 clues to the exact same mystery? What if there's one hidden epidemic connecting heart disease, Alzheimer's, infertility, and even certain cancers? That's the mind-bending revelation at the heart of today's book, Why We Get Sick, by Dr. Benjamin Bikman. Dr. Bikman is a biomedical scientist and professor who spent years studying how our bodies actually work at the cellular level. And what he's discovered is something everyone needs to hear. He argues that many of the chronic diseases terrifying us today aren't separate conditions at all. They're symptoms of one underlying disorder. And get this, recent studies suggest this disorder might affect up to 88% of American adults, with most people having absolutely no idea they have it. This hidden epidemic, it's called insulin resistance. Now, if you've heard of insulin, you probably think diabetes, right? But Dr. Bikman explains that's like only knowing about the tip of an iceberg, while a massive structure lurks beneath the surface. Insulin is actually one of the most powerful hormones in your entire body, and when it stops working properly, it triggers a chain reaction that can slowly, silently damage every single system, from your brain right down to your bones. So here's what we're going to do together. We're going to unravel this mystery. You'll understand what insulin resistance actually is, how to figure out if you have it, and most importantly, the simple, science-backed steps you can take starting today to fight it. This isn't about some miracle cure or complicated medical procedure. The solution, as you're about to discover, is actually already within your control. And understanding it might just be one of the most important things you ever do for your health and for the people you love. To understand the problem, we first need to meet the main character in our story. And here's the twist. It's not a villain. It's actually a hero, a humble, hardworking hero, called insulin. Most people think of insulin as just something diabetics inject, but it's actually a hormone your own body makes naturally. Think of insulin as the master manager of your body's energy delivery system. When you eat food, especially carbs, your blood sugar, or glucose to be technical, goes up. Your pancreas, this little organ tucked behind your stomach, releases insulin into your bloodstream. Insulin then travels around like a delivery person with a master key. It knocks on the doors of your cells, muscle cells, liver cells, brain cells, and says, "Hey, there's energy here. Open up." It unlocks the cells, allowing glucose to move from your blood inside, where it can be burned for fuel. This is incredibly important because if glucose stays too high in your blood for too long, it becomes toxic. So insulin keeps everything balanced and safe. But here's what most people miss. Regulating blood sugar is just one of insulin's many jobs. Dr. Bikman explains that insulin is what scientists call an anabolic hormone. That's fancy talk for it builds things up. Insulin's basic motto is grow. It tells your muscle cells to build new proteins. It tells your liver to store energy for later. It influences your sex hormones, your brain function, even whether cells live or die. Almost every single cell in your body has a receptor for insulin, a tiny keyhole waiting for insulin's message. And this is where things start to go sideways. What happens when you're shouting but nobody's listening? You shout louder, right? Insulin resistance is when your cells start going deaf to insulin's signal. The key still exists, but the lock is getting rusty and stuck. The cell doors don't open as easily anymore. So when your pancreas releases its normal amount of insulin, it's not enough to get the job done. The glucose just stays stuck in the blood. Your body senses this problem and thinks, well, if they can't hear me, I just need to yell louder. So your pancreas starts working overtime, pumping out more and more insulin to force those cells to listen. For a while, this actually works. The higher levels of insulin manage to keep your blood glucose in a normal range, so if a doctor only checks your blood sugar, everything looks perfectly fine. But underneath that normal-looking surface, you're now in a state called hyperinsulinemia, which means you have chronically high levels of insulin flooding your blood. You've got a manager constantly screaming, grow, store, build, at every cell in your body all day long. This, Dr. Bikman argues, is where almost everything starts going wrong. This isn't pre-diabetes, it is the disease already happening. Type 2 diabetes is just what we call it, when your exhausted pancreas finally can't yell loud enough anymore to keep your blood sugar down. The high blood sugar is the final symptom of a problem that started years, maybe even decades earlier. And during all those years of high insulin, the damage was already being done. Let's take a walk through the body and see what this constantly yelling manager actually does. Let's start with the heart. Heart disease kills more people worldwide than anything else. We've blamed cholesterol, we've blamed smoking, we've blamed salt. But Dr. Bikman presents mountains of evidence showing that insulin resistance is actually the puppet master, pulling the strings behind the scenes. One prominent physician, Joseph Kraft, even declared that those with cardiovascular disease not identified with diabetes are simply undiagnosed. So how does this work? High insulin damages your heart in several sneaky ways. First, it tells your kidneys to hold on to salt and water. This increases the total volume of blood in your vessels, which directly raises your blood pressure. It's like turning up the faucet on a garden hose. The pressure has to go up. Second, remember insulin's main job is telling cells to grow? Well, it tells the muscle cells lining your blood vessels to grow too. The vessel walls get thicker and stiffer, and the opening gets narrower. Again, think of that garden hose. If the walls get thicker on the inside, the water pressure skyrockets. Third, high insulin messes with the fats in your blood, your lipids. For decades, we've been told to fear LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad cholesterol. But the story is way more interesting than that. LDL actually comes in different sizes. There's the big fluffy kind, like beach balls, that tend to bounce along harmlessly in your bloodstream. That's called pattern A. Then there's the small, dense kind, like golf balls, that can easily get stuck in the walls of your arteries and cause dangerous plaque. That's pattern B. Guess what tells your liver to produce more of those dangerous little golf balls? Yep, high insulin. So you can have normal LDL levels on a standard test. But if your insulin is high, your blood could be packed with these dangerous particles, quietly setting the stage for a heart attack. Now let's travel up to the brain. For a long time, scientists thought the brain didn't even respond to insulin. Turns out that was completely wrong. Your brain is a massive energy consumer, and insulin plays a vital role in helping it get the glucose it needs for fuel. It also helps with learning and memory formation. What happens when the brain becomes insulin resistant? It starts to starve. Even though there might be plenty of glucose floating in the blood, the brain cells can't get it inside. The engine is sputtering, running on fumes. This state of brain energy starvation is actually a defining feature of Alzheimer's disease. The connection is so strong that some scientists have started calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Studies show that for every 10 years a person has insulin resistance, their brain looks 2 years older than it should. Here's the really chilling part. Your fasting insulin level is a more powerful predictor of Alzheimer's risk than your actual age. But the damage doesn't stop there. The silent alarm of high insulin echoes through every system. In women, the ovaries are super sensitive to insulin. High insulin disrupts the delicate hormonal balance needed for ovulation. It causes the ovaries to produce more male hormones, or androgens. This combination is literally the definition of polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, the most common cause of female infertility in the world. Millions of women suffer from it, and at its core, Dr. Bikman explains, PCOS is fundamentally a disease of too much insulin. In men, high insulin is equally disruptive. It directly suppresses testosterone production. That low T we hear about constantly? It's not just some random consequence of getting older. It's often a direct result of poor metabolic health. And because healthy blood vessel function is critical for getting and maintaining an erection, the same damage that high insulin causes to the heart's arteries also happens in smaller vessels everywhere, making erectile dysfunction one of the earliest warning signs that insulin resistance is developing. Even cancer fits into this disturbing picture. Cancer, at its simplest, is a disease of uncontrolled growth. And what's insulin's primary message to cells? Grow. Cancer cells are smart in the most sinister way possible. Many types of tumors, like breast and prostate cancer, develop way more insulin receptors than normal cells, sometimes over 6 times as many. They make themselves exquisitely sensitive to insulin's growth signal. So while the rest of your body's going deaf to insulin, your cancer cells are listening with massive amplifiers, using that high insulin to fuel their rapid, deadly expansion. This is why people with hyperinsulinemia have roughly double the risk of dying from cancer. It even shows up on your skin. Those little skin tags on your neck or under your arms, those patches of darker, velvety skin, these are often visible, outward signs of the high insulin levels coursing through your body, as insulin tells skin cells to grow and multiply too enthusiastically. Are you starting to see the picture forming here? This isn't a random collection of separate problems. It's one problem manifesting in dozens of different ways. It's a tree with one toxic root, but many, many poison branches spreading everywhere. So the next logical question is, what's feeding that root? If high insulin is the problem, what's causing our insulin to be so ridiculously high in the first place? This brings us to the second part of our story, the causes. The single most important cause of insulin resistance is, wait for it, too much insulin. That sounds like a riddle, I know, but it's actually a fundamental principle of biology. When any cell in your body gets overstimulated by any signal for too long, it protects itself by reducing its sensitivity to that signal. It's self-defense. If you walk into a room with a strong smell, after a few minutes you don't notice it anymore. Your nose has adapted. If you listen to loud music constantly, you slowly damage your hearing. Your cells do the exact same thing. When they're constantly bombarded with sky-high levels of insulin, they turn down the volume. They become insulin resistant. It's a defense mechanism that tragically backfires in the worst possible way. So what, in our modern world, is keeping our insulin chronically sky high? Dr. Bikman walks us through several culprits. There are some we can't really control, like aging and genetics. As we get older, we naturally become a bit more insulin resistant. And yes, some ethnic backgrounds and family lines are more prone to it. But these factors are honestly a pretty small part of the story. The real driver is our lifestyle, the things we do every single day. Think about stress. When you're stressed, whether you're running from an actual predator or just fuming in traffic, your body releases stress hormones like cortisol. Cortisol's job is making sure you have enough energy for the fight or flight response, so it tells your liver to dump sugar into the blood. It actively works against insulin, making your body temporarily insulin resistant. This is super useful if you actually need to run for your life. It's not so useful if you're just sitting at your desk, worrying about deadlines. Chronic stress means chronic cortisol, which contributes to chronic insulin resistance. Lack of sleep does the same thing. Just 1 week of sleeping a few hours less than you need can make your body about 30% more insulin resistant. Even being sedentary is a major contributor. When your muscles are inactive, they become less sensitive to insulin's signal. In fact, just immobilizing one leg in a cast can make that leg half as insulin sensitive as the active one in a matter of days. Pretty wild, right? But the biggest lever, the most powerful driver of high insulin, is absolutely the food we eat. Remember, every time you eat anything, your insulin goes up at least a little. But not all foods are created equal. Dr. Bikman explains it with beautiful clarity. There are 3 main types of macronutrients: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Dietary fat has virtually zero effect on your insulin levels. Protein causes a small, modest rise in insulin. Carbohydrates, especially refined starches and sugars, cause a massive, rapid spike in insulin, sometimes more than 10 times the normal level. Now think about the standard modern diet for a second. Breakfast is cereal, toast, or a bagel with orange juice. Lunch is a sandwich with chips and maybe a cookie. Dinner is pasta or rice with some protein on the side. And we snack on crackers, granola bars, and sodas in between. We're eating a diet absolutely dominated by insulin-spiking foods. And we're eating them literally all day long, from the moment we wake up until we go to bed. Our bodies are living in a constant flood of insulin, morning until night. Is it any wonder our cells have gone completely deaf? This is the absolute heart of the problem. We've been so obsessed with counting calories and fearing fat that we've completely ignored the hormonal effect of our food. And in doing so, we've accidentally created the perfect storm for insulin resistance to flourish and spread like wildfire. This all sounds pretty grim, doesn't it? It can feel like we're surrounded by invisible enemies. Our food, our stress, our entire modern lifestyle. But here's where the story takes a hopeful turn. Because if our lifestyle is the cause, it means our lifestyle can also be the cure. This brings us to the third and most empowering part of Dr. Bikman's message, the solution. The goal is actually beautifully simple: lower your insulin. If you do that, you allow your cells to regain their sensitivity. You let them hear the signal again. The deafness isn't permanent. It's reversible. How do we do it? Dr. Bikman lays out a clear, evidence-based plan, and it doesn't involve expensive drugs or surgeries. It revolves around 2 things you control every single day: how you move and what you eat. First, let's talk about movement. Exercise is incredibly powerful, and here's why. When your muscles contract during activity, they can pull glucose out of your blood without needing any insulin whatsoever. It's like having a secret back door into the cell that only opens when you're physically active. This means every single time you exercise, even just going for a casual walk, you're directly lowering your blood glucose and giving your exhausted pancreas a much-needed break. Your insulin levels naturally fall. What kind of exercise is best? Dr. Bikman says the best exercise is honestly the one you'll actually do consistently. But if you want the most bang for your buck, resistance training, like lifting weights, or even just using your own body weight, might have a slight edge. Why? Because it builds muscle tissue. And muscle is your body's biggest glucose sink, your largest storage facility. The more muscle you have, the more places you have to store glucose safely, which helps keep your insulin naturally lower. But as powerful as exercise is, you absolutely cannot outrun a bad diet. The most powerful tool you have is literally your fork, what you choose to put in your mouth. And the strategy is built on 4 simple pillars. Pillar 1. Control carbohydrates. This is the single most important rule. Since refined carbohydrates and sugars are what spike your insulin the most dramatically, you need to get smart about them. This doesn't mean you have to eliminate all carbs forever and live some joyless existence, but it does mean you need to stop making them the foundation of every single meal. Ditch the sugary drinks entirely. Swap the bread, pasta, and rice for non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, spinach, and cauliflower. If a food comes in a box or bag with a mile-long list of ingredients you can't pronounce, it's likely a carbohydrate bomb to avoid. Eat the whole fruit. Don't drink the juice. The fiber in whole fruit slows down sugar absorption and blunts the insulin spike significantly. Pillar 2. Prioritize protein. Protein is essential for your muscles, bones, immune system, and overall health. It has a much smaller effect on insulin than carbs do, and it helps you feel genuinely full and satisfied, not just temporarily stuffed. Aim for quality protein from real food sources like meat, fish, eggs, and dairy at every meal. Pillar 3. Fill with fat. This is the part that might feel really strange, because we've been told for 50 years that fat is the absolute enemy. But as we've learned, healthy dietary fat has essentially no effect on insulin whatsoever. It provides steady, reliable energy and helps with satiety, keeping you satisfied between meals. So don't fear fat anymore. Embrace healthy, natural fats from sources like avocados, olives, olive oil, coconut oil, butter, and the fat that comes naturally with your protein. Stop buying the low-fat versions of everything. That missing fat is almost always replaced with insulin-spiking sugar or weird chemicals. Pillar 4. Watch the clock. This isn't just about what you eat, but when you eat. Remember, the goal is giving your body real breaks from high insulin. If you're grazing and snacking all day long, your insulin never has a chance to come down and reset. Dr. Bikman recommends practicing some form of intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. This sounds intimidating at first, but it can be as simple as finishing dinner by 7 in the evening and not eating again until breakfast at 7 in the morning. That 12-hour break gives your body precious time to lower insulin, reset its sensitivity, and start burning its own stored body fat for fuel instead of constantly storing more. Control carbs, prioritize protein, fill with fat, and give your body time to rest between meals. It really is that simple. It's not about starving yourself or suffering. It's about changing the fuel you give your body. When you shift away from a diet of constant carbohydrates, your body adapts remarkably quickly. It becomes efficient at using fat for energy, both the fat you eat and the fat stored on your body. Hunger fades and becomes more manageable. Energy levels stabilize instead of crashing every few hours. And most importantly, your insulin levels come down naturally. And when insulin comes down, the magic genuinely starts to happen. Your blood pressure improves. Your cholesterol profile gets better. Your risk for heart disease, Alzheimer's, and so many other chronic illnesses begins to plummet. You're not just managing symptoms with pills. You're treating the actual root cause. You're solving the puzzle from the inside out. When you finish a book like Why We Get Sick, it's hard not to feel a real mix of emotions. There's maybe a bit of anger at how we've been given the wrong advice for so long, the constant drumbeat to fear fat and load up on healthy whole grains, the obsessive focus on calories while completely ignoring hormones. There's definitely a sense of urgency, realizing that this isn't some abstract scientific problem happening to other people somewhere else, but a deeply personal crisis affecting us, our parents, our friends, right this moment. But the overwhelming feeling, at least for me, is one of genuine empowerment. The central message of this book is profoundly hopeful. It tells us we're not simply helpless victims of our genes or the inevitable decay of aging. It hands us back the steering wheel of our own health. The idea that so many terrifying diseases, the ones that rob us of our loved ones and our quality of life, aren't random separate monsters lurking in the dark, but rather different faces of the same manageable condition, is nothing short of revolutionary. It reframes absolutely everything. A skin tag is no longer just a cosmetic annoyance. It's a postcard from your metabolism, gently tapping you on the shoulder and saying, "Pay attention. High blood pressure isn't just a salt problem to fix with medication. It's an insulin problem calling for a different solution. Brain fog isn't just an inevitable sign of getting older. It could be a sign that your brain is struggling to get fuel." Dr. Bikman gives us a completely new lens through which to see our health, one that connects all the dots and makes sense of what seemed like chaos. And the most beautiful part of this entire message is its elegant simplicity. The solution isn't some billion-dollar pharmaceutical with a scary list of side effects. It's not radical, irreversible surgery. The solution is rooted in honoring the way our bodies were actually designed to work by millions of years of evolution. It's about returning to real, whole foods and embracing natural patterns of eating and moving that our ancestors would recognize. So if you're listening to this right now and feeling that spark of recognition, that feeling of, wait, this actually makes sense, I want to encourage you to not let it fade away like so many good intentions. Knowledge is only potential power sitting dormant. Real power comes from taking action. And you don't have to change everything overnight in some dramatic transformation. Start with just one small, manageable step. Here are a few practical ideas. First, just look at your breakfast tomorrow morning. Don't judge it harshly, just observe it with curiosity. Is it a bowl of cereal? A couple pieces of toast? A muffin? Ask yourself one simple question. What is this doing to my insulin right now? If the honest answer is spiking it sky high, maybe the next day you could try something different. Maybe some eggs with avocado. Maybe some Greek yogurt with nuts. Just see how you feel, how your energy is different. Second, go for a 20-minute walk. That's literally it. You don't need a gym membership or fancy gear or special shoes. Just move your muscles. Remind your body how to use that secret insulin-free back door to get energy into cells. And third, the next time you see your doctor, be brave enough to ask them something. Could we test my fasting insulin? It's a simple, inexpensive blood test, but it might just be the most important number you ever learn about your health, more important than your weight or your cholesterol. That was a summary of Why We Get Sick by Dr. Benjamin Bikman. We've journeyed through the core ideas today, but I'll be completely honest with you. A summary can only be a basic map. The real treasure is found when you explore the actual territory yourself. The true power of this book lies in the depth of the scientific research, the clarity of the explanations, and the profound sense of hope and agency it offers. This summary is designed to help you decide if this journey is one you want to take for yourself. If anything we've talked about has struck a chord, if it's made you question what you thought you knew about health, then I genuinely urge you to grab a copy of the full book. Reading it isn't just about passively learning information. It's about gaining a new understanding that can legitimately change the way you live your life. You'll find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if this exploration has brought you any value today, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another potentially life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.